The uplifting sounds of Nduduzo Makhathini playing Hugh Masekela welcome us to the big debate live on SABC2 and SAFM, also streaming on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Ridi Tlabi. Now, our country is divided. For many, the promises of the Rainbow Nation came to nothing. Decent housing, health and education never materialized. On top of that, we see racist incidents. Patience is clearly running out. Now, for 10 years, our leaders seemed to have nothing to offer. Can Cyril Ramaphosa bring us a new dawn to restore our faith in government and each other? Are we ready to heed his call, Tumamina, Rumanna, send me to rebuild South Africa? Well, with me to discuss this are Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana from the South African Council of Churches, Crispin Son, formerly of Old Mutual and now CEO of his own investment company. We have Ayabonga Tawe, talk show host and economist, Kali Kriel of AfriForum, writer and producer Nolwazi Tusini, author and musician Sizwe Mpofu Walsh, and multi-award-winning artist Simpiwe Dana. And of course, our studio is filled with students, artists, activists, and entrepreneurs from across the country. Welcome to all of you. Now, our new president has a few nicknames. Ramaphospona, for the delay in removing you-know-who, Jacob Zuma. Ramazupta, for his failure to deal with members of his own party implicated in state capture. And finally, Ramaphoria, for the hope hitting the nation. So let's hear from our audience who will admit to having a tiny bit of Ramaphoria. Optimism about Cyril's new dawn. If you're in the studio, raise your hand. Any optimism? Come on, somebody must be optimistic. There you are, young man. We'll hear more from you. Now, if you're at home, post on Facebook or Twitter or buzz us for a call back. We took to the streets of Johannesburg, and this is what people had to say.
We should put all the negativity that has dogged our country behind us, because a new dawn is upon us. And a wonderful dawn has arrived.
I'm actually very excited about the new dawn. Like, it's a total new beginning of new things, and I'm hoping for the best.
I think the new president is an excellent man. He's a business-minded man. I think we're going to get into a different realm of thinking.
When he gave us his speech, he mentioned that he's going to combat unemployment with graduates from different institutions.
I feel like it's a great start for us.
Allow me to recall the words of the late, great Bra Hugh Masekela. I want to be there for the victims of violence and abuse. I want to lend a hand. Send me. Now is the time for each one of us to say, South Africa, send me.
Wanna be there when the people start to turn it around, when they triumph over poverty.
I think if we decided to follow those words in that song of Hugh Masekela, Send Me, and everyone just did a little drop in the ocean, we can all go forward smiling in this country.
We just have to go back to our roots, Ubuntu, helping one another.
I think he's trying to tell the whole country, send each one of us to help and make this country a better place.
I think we've all got to work together. We've all got to put back the criticism and the worries and the troubles, and we've got to say we're going to work together, we're going to help each other, we're going to make this a new, beautiful South Africa with community being number one.
Sandton, richest square mile in Africa, home to bankers, lawyers, and high-paid executives. For many here, Tumamina brings back memories of good governance under former leaders.
I think he's actually trying to get our country back into a state of where Thabo Mbeki was trying to get us to when he was president.
Yes, Tumamina.
I know Shiniwam, but no, not to
Oh, I don't know that song. You're making me feel so bad. Tumamina, to contribute positively to the growth of our economy.
I'm quite happy that it seems our government is starting to see the importance of the arts.
Award-winning musician Simpiwe Dana knew Hugh Masekela.
I don't know how the family of Hugh Masekela would feel about it, or how Brahu himself would feel about it. Because from the few convos that I'd had with him, he was not happy with our government. And he was not shy of telling them.
No, I think it's a new false dawn. And I think the problem we've had post-democracy is we've been waiting for new dawns. We've fallen for new slogans. But the fundamental problems that confront our society have actually deepened. Our juxtaposition, it seems, is we're between Biko's dream and Hollywood screams. And though political freedom was a lifeline, the distance between Alex and Sandton is still a lifetime.
The walk from Sandton to Alex may be 5 kilometers, but these two cities are worlds apart. In Alexandra Township, people are still fighting for a better life.
Mina ngegama nguThemba awamafoya. I'm 29 years old. I'm volunteering at the Youth Advisory Center.
Themba believes change must come from the ground.
If thina esulusha singami sincedane sihlangane ngento eyodwa ezonceda umuntu enye youth akekho umuntu ozosinceda.
The infrastructure in Alex was originally created for 70,000 people. The current population is estimated to at least be 4 times this number.
Kunendawo ngaseKelvin eFrankenwald yiyo ilento esi-identifyile kwabantu base-Alexandra ngoba si-congested la sibaningi kakhulu wabona ama-families and sihlala kuma-one room ngoba kunzima cabanga nje umama onomntwana omfana umele ugeze phambi komfana izusubuhlungu leyo nto. President Cyril Ramaphosa must come and see ukuthi abantu basela la Alexandra bahlala kanjani. Thuma mina sesizwe awungizoya ngithanda si. Yabona lelo culo lelo ngilithanda kakhulu ngoba nami ngicula lona ngithi thuma mina abantu base-Alexandra ngiyolwela ilizwe leliya lase-Frankenwald. Ngithi thumani mina abantu base-Alexandra masolwela ama-service delivery la-Alexandra. Ngithi thumani mina abantu base-Alexandra bangiyolwela ilusha lethu lumele lithole umsebenzi. Ngithi phinde futhi ngithi thumani mina.
Bishop Mpumlwana. Bishop Mpumlwana, Tumamina, we've been here before. There was a man called Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma, came into power in 2009, and many believed that that was a new dawn. Are we gullible? How many new dawns are we going to have?
Well, I think, first of all, before democracy, the people on the ground stood up for their rights. We determined the public values and standards that matter. But somehow, because of Mandela, we thought every politician is going to give half his salary to start a children's fund, and we disengaged. The point is, yes, Tumamina, but we should also determine the agenda for the Tuma.
All right, so when the president invoked Tumamina, he was quoting Brahu Masekela, but we know that the prophet Isaiah, Isaiah 6 verse 8, also said to the Lord, send me to spread your message. I mean, whose message does Cyril Ramaphosa want us to spread, and to what end?
If you want to go biblical, I can say that in the case of Isaiah, something happened before he said Tumamina. He was cleansed first. We haven't cleansed the government. And the only way to cleanse the government in a democracy is to invest in the power of the people to hold their servant, the government, to account all the time. And therefore, we need structures for that in civil society.
So, Sizwe, you left us in no doubt as to your cynicism around Tumamina, but is it time to just cut the guy some slack and just give Tumamina a chance?
Thanks. You know, I've heard this. Let's just celebrate just give us 2 minutes. We want to be hopeful. And I understand why people want to be hopeful, because we've lived for 10 years being thrown under the bus by the people who we invested our hope in. But my problem is that hope, which is not founded on evidence, is actually counterproductive. And what it ends up being is a shield for the powerful to give themselves a blank check. And so if we've learned anything over this last, not 10, but 24 years, it's that the time for giving people a chance is long gone. And in my view, the so-called new dawn is nothing but an old story. It's nothing but an attempt to make us forget everything that's happened over the last 10 years and give us and give our government a free rein without holding them accountable.
Okay, let's hear from business. So, Crispin, business loves Cyril Ramaphosa, but the evidence is against business in terms of how far it has gone to come to the party and to practice Tumamina in the past. Can we trust business?
Sure. Look, let's be clear, business has a lot to answer for, and I think that's playing out in the public domain. It does strike me that after the entire presidential address, though, the two words that reverberate through South Africa is not anything else the president said except Tumamina. Send me that. So that does demonstrate.
Because people love Tuma Sigel.
That's a possibility. But I also think it's because people are dying for a spirit of optimism. It's such just a break in the dark clouds of the past. So I do have to confess I'm one of those people that for a week or so celebrated the optimism of Tumamina. Business does have a lot to answer for, and business often argues that it drives by the rules of the road. As the rules are set, it operates within those rules. I think there's a consensus view amongst business that it has to do a lot more than that.
I must challenge you on that because even in the Mandela years, when the Rainbow Nation was literally in our spirits and in our souls, when so many people demonstrated goodwill, many businesses, and I know that you were associated with Old Mutual, not at that time, but in the last couple of years, Old Mutual delisted. Many rich people took their profits elsewhere, they put them in the banks, they didn't invest in this South Africa. So business has heard the positive message before, but they did nothing with it.
Sure. So look, let me just clarify one thing. I no longer speak for Mutual, and I don't have a mandate for them, and I don't have a mandate for big business. I absolutely believe and am of the conviction that business has a lot to answer and has an incredibly broader role to play than what it defines itself just to employ people and pay taxes. Business has a bigger role to play. The challenge, though, is who sets the agenda. And I think the Bishop spoke about this. We do need to go back to a point of common societal values. What are the common and those values, business must be held to account as well. More than just the triple bottom line, but to those values. And I think that's the consensus view that's emerging about and within business.
Can we trust them, Ayabonga? I mean, he says that business has a lot to answer for. He does admit to that. But in terms of business's ability to make Tumamina a reality and something that all South Africans from all walks of life enjoy in their everyday material conditions.
The track record is dismal, really. It's dismal. If you look from 1993 right up to now in 2017, at no point in time has business, one, invested, has business said we are going to open up our value chains so that we stop the concentrated nature of our economy. At no point have they done that. And I think we need to move away from thinking optimism, good sentiment, and all of those things are a strategy. They're not. We need proper plans to deal with the underlying structural issues in our economy. And we need a lot less of this optimism that's sitting there, very charitable, very, let's all do a Mandela Day and be voluntary and all of that stuff. We need to be very clear that what it is that we need to do is all of the things that we've committed to through the Constitution. So no one must not have a house.
Sure.
No one must be landless in this kind of society. And it cannot be that we're going to place the sentiments of banks that are saying, look, actually we'd first like to protect the bonds that we have, when the constitutional commitment that we all bound ourselves to in 1994 is still unmet.
I mean, Kali, let me bring you in here from AfriForum. The landless and the poor are black. The face of poverty in South Africa is black. Are you not representing the wrong people? Should you not focus on those people rather than minorities? Minorities are not the most disadvantaged people in South Africa.
Well, of course, there are minorities that are disadvantaged, but we've always said that we would like to see a society where everybody are prosperous. And the fact is, if you're going to take on certain issues with regard to the land issue at government, you're not necessarily acting on behalf of the interests of minorities. If you look at a place like Zimbabwe, where you have a 90% unemployment rate at the moment, then you should be able to say, well, the route that has been taken there is not the correct route, and it would be in the interest of everybody in the country for us to say certain positions that is not popular with government.
So are you saying that African governments don't work? I mean, I remember when you first started in this role in 2008, you did an interview where you were saying the government is responsible for the Zanification of South Africa. I think that was a bit of a swart gevaar, where we're in a better situation there than we are now.
No, I think you are misrepresenting what I've ever said. We've always said that we want to promote the interests of everybody in this country. But what we are saying is we should not sit back and say government should solve our problems. Then you're going to be disappointed. We should say, well, we should hold government accountable, but we can all individually play a role to make a difference, and that is what AfriForum is doing. We're not only serving minorities. Last year we fixed 16,000 potholes, which all South Africans can drive on. We've tested water in 156 towns, water that is drunk by all South Africans. So I think it's a misrepresentation to say when you voice minority concerns that you don't, that other people's interests are not important to you.
So, Simphiwe, when you hear the Bishop and Kali and everybody else in the same room, can you sign up for Tumamina?
I think that we have a very fractured society, and that there's a lot of ingenuity from many sides with regards to how we can find a point of unity in SA, regardless of what our government is going through. I feel like we should be the ones who are at the forefront of what happens with our own country. But the way we are fractured and the way that we don't necessarily like each other, I think it's coming to the fore now. For instance, Kali and AfriForum should not exist in a democratic society at all, under any guise whatsoever.
You don't think minority rights must be catered for and protected in a democracy?
I don't think that it's not necessarily
provision for that.
I don't think necessarily it's about minority rights. Recently, what AfriForum is fighting for is the preservation of the apartheid flag. I don't know in what society that AfriForum would think that is okay for a symbol of our oppression to continue to exist. So now the question is, what are they fighting for? Are they fighting for their rights or their privileges? And there's a huge difference there.
Okay, Kali, I think I should give you a right of reply here, and also add in that interview that you say I'm misquoting, you were joining AfriForum and you were saying that you were joining to protect minority rights, but also to mobilize Afrikaners not to look backwards, but to be part of the future. So what do you say about this?
Well, I think there's one big mistake. You cannot use the word democracy and say something should not be allowed to exist. When you say something should not exist, that happens in dictatorships. That happens in dictatorships. Freedom of
again,
speech,
you're wrong.
a democracy is where you have various voices participating, but the kind of intolerance, people now want to accuse us of intolerance, but you have people saying we should not exist.
You are fighting for the apartheid flag.
Are you fighting for the apartheid flag?
You are fighting for the apartheid flag.
We don't use,
what does that say?
We don't use that flag, and we've said it quite clearly. But we say we cannot go into a society where there's not freedom of speech, because next time someone would say, you know, Julius Malema, because what he says is hurtful, he should not be allowed to exist.
Okay,
and that
there's a huge difference between freedom of speech and freedom to continue being
Finish
oppressive.
your point quickly. Finish your point.
It's definitely not oppressive. We're saying that everybody should be allowed to have their voices heard.
We'll come back to that one.
We should not have this kind of intolerance, because that's
it's
not
democracy.
We'll come back to that one, and Nolwazi will give you,
it's a kind of voices you heard in Nazi Germany towards Jews. That's what you hear from.
You're using the Nazi example.
Wow.
Now I think you got yourself into trouble there, but we'll get there in a moment. We'll get there in a moment.
Because you
When we return, we hear from activists fighting for land in Alex. And coming soon, a musical moment. You're watching The Big Debate.
Yes, I think Cyril Ramaphosa can bring change into South Africa. Basically, if we're looking at European countries, all the presidents, they are entrepreneurs, they're businessmen. They do not choose politics to become businessmen. For a reason why, because Jacob Zuma brought himself into this because he was not educated and he did not have some sort of education behind him. So I feel like Cyril Ramaphosa can bring change. Also looking at McDonald's. If it wasn't because of Cyril Ramaphosa, we wouldn't have McDonald's in South Africa. So that's why I think he's a good leader and he will bring change into South Africa.
Let's give Cyril Ramaphosa a chance because he's a businessman. He understands everything about business. Give him a chance. He's going to make change in this country. Bye. Shop.
I think President Ramaphosa will bring the change because he's been in the industry of business and he's been in Parliament for quite a while, and he has got an experience of what is going on in South Africa. So I really support that he is going to bring a change in South Africa. Thank you.
I think that he will, because why? The thing is, Zuma already he made a big mistake of breaking this country apart. But I know that what he saw, so he can make a change within the world of today, and that's for our generation.
Yes, I think Cyril Ramaphosa will bring change to the country because immediately he was elected, he came in and he fired everyone who was ineffective to the economy, and then. As he was elected, I see him bringing change right now. So many things are changing from the moment he was elected. Things are changing.
I strongly believe he can. As a man of faith, I believe in God. I believe in change. The guy has already proven himself by reshuffling his guys that's going to work with him in Parliament. And we as the communities, we just have to be patient and believe that he will really, it will always take time. It took time for us to get our own democracy. It took time for a party to break. Let's have faith in the man.
Welcome back to the big debate. We are talking about the new dawn that President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke of in his State of the Nation speech. But it's not as if the sun came up the next day on a transformed country. We still live with the worst inequality in the world. The JSE in Sandton is at record highs. 5 kilometers away, over 500,000 people live in shacks or poor housing. Temba Mafuya is from Alex. He supports Tumamina, but on his terms. Tell us about those.
Thank you very much. Yes, I support Tumamina, but on one condition. If President Cyril Ramaphosa will give us the land in Frankenwald. We're not going to hear what the AfriForum is saying. That's nonsense. Because what they are doing, they are oppressing us. They are the cause of the thing that is happening in Alexander. So they must stop that nonsense. The majority must rule this country, not minority.
In your experience, has the government in the last year, a couple of years since 1994, demonstrated a willingness for that redress? Where does the blame lie for the law not being used to get people like yourself that land?
You know what, it's a very tricky game, you know. Because remember, Alexander is an old township. It gave birth to the like of Sophiatown, the like of Soweto. So Alexander is a place for politics to come and play in Alexander. So to use the voters of Alexander, to put Alexander in televisions and say, no, we're going to donate a couple of monies to Alexander. So that's the place for politics. We are tired of that. What do you want is the land. We are not going to be apologetic on that. We want the land.
Nolwazi, you talk to us about Tumamina. How do we bring all of this together? What needs to happen here?
I think that what needs to happen here is that the government, and particularly the ANC-led government, needs to Tuma themselves. Because quite frankly, the citizens of this country have been Tuma'd all the places. We're talking from tech, with the HIV/AIDS crisis that we had, which was by a large chance made by the ANC-led government at the time, right? We're speaking about equal education. We're speaking about what happened in Marikana. We're speaking about the citizens of this country have been Tuma'd, and we've done our bit. The fact that we've gotten to where we are right now, where the ANC even felt the kind of pressure that they did to do something that we've been complaining about since the time of Kwezi, right, means that we've done our bit. So quite frankly, as a citizen of this country, I need the politicians to Tuma themselves to do what needs to be done. There are laws in places, there's a constitution in place, and that's what they need to do.
Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the microphone from you for just a moment because you said the politicians need to tuma themselves.
Yes.
There is one here in the audience. He's a former chief whip of the ANC in Parliament, but he also holds a very important portfolio, that of justice. And justice has everything to do with restitution and healing the nation. He's the chairperson of the justice, the portfolio committee on justice. So, Ntate Mathole Motshekga, it is you and your colleagues who must tuma yourselves. When are you going to do it?
President Ramaphosa was not arrogant. He said...
Let him speak.
He said, let's collaborate, let's form partnerships, let's work together and move forward. And I think that basis answers this question, which means there is a basis to move forward together, because civil society alone, government alone will never make it. I'm happy that now you want us to move on together, and we're ready.
We've always wanted that. Maybe let's hear from black business. Let's hear from black business. I mean, have organizations such as yours done enough in the past? And where do you locate Tumamina in terms of your mandate as black business?
Tumamina is a very good and noble idea, but I suspect it's not going to last for long, because you can't have a situation where 24 years into democracy, the black people are just numerical majority, but they are minority in everything else. They are minority culturally, they are minority in terms of business. Who runs the economy in the country? It's run by white people, white males to be specific. The people who are actually owning the economy, who's owning it. And I think the mistake we made was that the people who are trying to push for reconciliation is the oppressed people. The white people are not buying into reconciliation. They haven't done it.
I'm going to give you a chance to speak, Kali, about the other matter, the last issue around the flag, and also just the message here that there's a sense in which many are feeling we came to the table, but a certain section of our population didn't come to the table. In fact, let's go there just now. We agree that racism is wrong. We agree that reconciliation is important, but it's quite clear from listening to this audience that reconciliation now means something totally different. It doesn't mean us singing Shosholoza at the stadium or Kumbaya. Land is coming up repeatedly. What message are you going to take to your constituency around this issue?
Well, I think it's simply wrong to say that reconciliation only comes from one side. If you've listened to the message today, it said that minority organizations should be banned. That is not putting reconciliation on the table. You're hearing a society that does not take issues such as farm murder seriously. You're telling people that they are simply thieves, that all the problems in the country started when they came there. And that is exactly, I'm so glad that he was so rude to interrupt me, because that shows the intolerance that minorities are experiencing in this country at the moment. Yes, good.
Seriously, okay, Kali. Kali, nonsense is there.
I love this crowd because they are simply proving what I'm saying.
Okay, Kali,
I'll
give you a chance. But Kali, I want us to look each other in the eye. You've said a whole lot of things about the oppression of the minorities, and I grew up in Soweto in the 90s. I saw the dawn of a new South Africa. I saw white people coming to Soweto and being embraced. So the hurt and the pain here comes from a lived experience. But what I want to ask you is, don't you think you are making your case hard by promoting the apartheid flag, and you use the Nazi flag as an example, a symbol of hatred and oppression? Surely there's no place for that if we are moving forward.
You see, this is also the kind of where people are not listening. If you want reconciliation, you should listen. And that we don't hear from him. Listen, you know, I'm so happy about this crowd. They are brilliant.
Bishop, we need prayer.
Okay,
Bishop, how do we reconcile these? And Simpiwe, I know you are boiling, you are raring to go. I'm going to give you a chance, and Nolwazi as well. But Bishop, how do we bring this together? Bishop?
It's very clear that we're a wounded nation, we're a very heavily divided nation. but it's divided on critical issues that need to be resolved in order for us to move forward. We can't move forward without resolving these things.
So when we return, a musical performance, and we reflect on the spiritual side of Tumamina. Don't go away.
esebenzisana naye uZuma because i-president mind you ngeke yenza ama-decision yodwa, ine-structure phakathi engabe ba-decide bonke. If lo muntu lo udle imali, what makes ulona uRamaphosa ukuthi yena ibe akayidlanga? Singakhohlwa ukuthi there is ultra-leftism and there is rightism. Ekugcineni siwazi kanjani ukuthi lo ultra-leftism and lo rightism, whereby we don't even know what are they doing behind the doors. Ngiyabonga.
Mina baba ngibona ukuthi uCyril Ramaphosa angayichinja South Africa. Ngoba uCyril Ramaphosa into ebhekile kuye. Right, the time striking eMarikana into ayenzile into ezithi ngibona ngeke akho ukushintsha. Even shoot namaye ukuthi simgwaqeni sotoyiza thiwa basidubule, so angiboni mina ngachinja because shoot uyahluleka ukulungisa inkinga. Kubulungisa inkinga zabantu labo bantu ede bekhala ngento encane nje, just bafuna ukuletha ukuthi bakhushele imiholo kwamele kufa abantu. So angiboni ukuthi even kuthiwa mhlawumbe nathi kunezinto esisidingayo, sifuna ukuthi thuthuka indawo esihlala kuyo, mara angiboni ukuthi yena angasinika lelo thuba lelo.
Cyril Ramaphosa can change the state country or the state of this country because actually, first things first, he promotes healthy living. In the morning he woke up and walked with South African citizens taking selfies, and then, okay, ignoring Taba Ena selfies, I think that he thinks about the well-being of his South Africans, and now he's promoting healthy living, which will make people more aware whether they should live healthy.
No, into like makaqeda ngena lo muntu lo. Sibulawa yiphaloni ama-Leicester size ngalana akufanele manje ukuthi sidle ikota, come on.
I think he will. I think Cyril Ramaphosa will bring more changes to the country based on his credentials, because he's the founding secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers. He is the first secretary of the African National Congress after its unbanning, and we've seen his key leadership, besides that, he became a leader when it was very unpopular to do so, but based on his business credentials as well, it shows that he is a man that can run a capitalist state, because it's not like we're speaking necessarily.
Send me to prepare a place so tranquil to those who died from being moved from Esidimeni. Let me go to their graves and sing them a sweet, sweet lullaby. Some died from the torture of hunger, ribs protruding like guitar strings strummed to entertain the financial profit of those who do not care. Let me be the shovel to turn the soil for the construction of a society where disability does not matter. Send me. Let me be the voice to be transported to the ears of Parliament so they may open their eyes to the reality of the disease of inequality. Send me to the table of plenty so I may ask, would you sit down on a table and break bread with me? Or would you let my disability be a river standing between me and your caring spirit? Let my voice whisper to the womb of change so that society for all could be born. So I may walk the streets with no staring eyes, pregnant with all kinds of condemnation. Send me so I may be a voice that continually speak in your mind, reminding you to do right. Yes, send me.
Welcome back to the big debate. That was Lux Matoto, a big debate viewer from Bisho, performing for the first time a poem he wrote, a moving poem, I might add. He wrote for the big debate. And of course, on keyboards, Young Artist of the Year winner, Nduduzo Makhathini. Now, Lux, what is it that those in power are not hearing? You are talking about life Esidimeni. You are talking about disability. But there's something that resonates, I think, with the audience here, that you want those in Parliament to hear, to know about the disease of inequality, to open their ears and know about the disease of inequality. What is that like?
If you tuma mina and I arrive to a place that you are sending me to, with a string of stairs that a disabled person can't even get in, you are as good as not have sent me. I write about Esidimeni because it is a stigma, a sore stigma on the cloth and or the fabric of democracy, where disabled people are not even cared for. It's more than a massacre, 143 people. It's more than a massacre, torture from hunger, and they died. And you want to tumamina, so I'm saying facilitate a space for me to be able to be sent and listen to disabled peoples and the issues of inequality.
We know that the arts can heal and they are a mirror to our society. As an artist, are you encouraged by Tumamina and the fact that the president is quoting artists? Do you see a bigger role for people like yourself to achieve these ideals that we're also desperate for?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of artists and the message of being sent, we've been doing it. I mean, Brahu, they've started doing it in the 50s already. So this is nothing new as far as the artist sort of space or the community is concerned. So, but I'm intrigued by something that the bishop said as well about the cleansing. And because we know as African people, we exist sort of in two realms. And most of what we're talking about is really based on the physical brutality, which we understand. Biko spoke about the mind and how that was brutalized. But also there is what Zimngawala referred to as the vandalism of the soul. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important as well to sort of speak about that, because part of what maybe the colonial project hijacked was our connection to the other realm, which is important to us, because what we see is just a manifestation of how our ancestors are feeling. And I think we really have angry ancestors, and we have to find ways, and through maybe music and other means, and we're happy that the president realizes our role as artists in society.
Simpiwe, I mean, can we reach the other side? How do we create this world, even as you believe that the AfriForums of this world should not exist? Can we create that world?
The world of hope? Well, I think that we have been hopeful since 1994. We have compromised a lot to get us to a point of unity as a people in SA. I think we really have tried a lot. In fact, the other day I was speaking to a friend who said that it's quite amazing that we have waited and been patient for as long as we have, 24 years of being patient with very little change, and also a lot of antagonism and a lot of entitlement and no sense of remorse that we've had to deal with as Africans. So I think we are at a point where we feel like we can no longer coddle anyone. We will move ahead, come hell or high water. We will get everything that we have been fighting for the past 350 years.
Okay, I know Sizwe and Ayabonga will speak on that in just a moment, but let me bring in, I know you don't speak for business, but you are a businessman. Having listened to that poem, and I can't help but reflect on the distance between those who have and those who do not. And it's our reality. But you lie awake and wonder whether those who have are actually aware of what goes on the ground. What are business people saying to each other about rebuilding South Africa? We are in a desperate situation.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think business and government need to take a fair amount of responsibility for the level of inequality that exists in our society. The question now that we are, and I mentioned to you earlier that I was filled with a few weeks of, or a few days of euphoria, and then of course I started asking myself deeper questions. What does Tumamina mean? Does it, who's it talking to? Is it another euphemism for deployment? And then what is it, what will it achieve? And the first thing that struck me, and I think the point was made that business has a dismal track record. We must make a couple of key important distinctions here. Which business are you talking about? Large business, small business, medium business, because that's a broad brush. The second thing is business has supported the non-governmental organizations to some extent, to a declining extent.
Very declining, and their decor in the reception
No,
costs
go back to
far more than what they
1994.
give
The
social
record
justice.
speaks for itself. Society was dependent on NGOs because of a government that wasn't serving society. So the issue for me, when I look at the issue of Tumamina, it tells me there is no substitute in this country for a well-funded, efficient and accountable government.
Do you trust that will happen? No. Just like that, no.
Sorry, what won't happen? Trust that what won't happen?
I don't trust that there will be a functional, well-efficient government because there is nothing to suggest that I should trust that. I've spent 24 years in this democracy trusting that. And so, quite frankly, people saying it is no longer sufficient.
Can we restore trust, Sizwe and Ayabong? Okay, let's start with you,
Well,
Sizwe.
I would just add to that. We need to look at who's celebrating this new dawn.
Yes.
And it seems to me that the people who are celebrating the new dawn are the people who made it possible that we needed a new dawn in the first place. Big financial interests and big political interests. And the people are still stuck in the old night.
You are saying,
You know, Reddy, I think it's incorrect for us to always live on a wing and a prayer. Let me make two examples. The first one is, if you look at this issue of listeriosis, when they recalled all of those products, on all of those shelves, what you saw were empty shelves. Surely that must tell you something. That two major players are the ones that give us all our cold meats processing capability, and all of us, they determine how the food is available, at what price, at what quality. And so for me, the distinction between small or big business doesn't really matter, because what I am eating is oftentimes coming from big business, who has a different agenda to me. From the front of government, if we were to look at this new dawn, let's look at the budget. A budget was passed in this country that said all of the indirect taxes, VAT, fuel levy, and excise taxes on what are called sin taxes, disproportionately where poor people spend more on those things than the rich. All of those things are lumped together, and they say, actually, in this tuming that we are going to do, the people who must be sent more than others are the ones who are the poor, who must carry all of those things. And I think that's incorrect.
When we return, we ask if you are willing to be sent, and if so, what exactly you want to be sent there for. Talk to you in a moment.
afternoon. I wanted to say that these people from AfriForum, they still want to perpetuate this white supremacy, of which we gave them 24 years without confronting them about the oppression that we've experienced.
Welcome back to the big debate on the new dawn in South Africa. We're live on SABC2 and SAFM. We are also live on Facebook and YouTube. Send your comments and join us for a second hour of discussion online at 8 p.m. When Hugh Masekela sang Tumamina, he said, I want to be there when the people start to turn it around, when they triumph over poverty. I want to be there when the people win the battle against AIDS. I want to lend a hand. Send me Tumamina. So what are you willing to be sent for? Tell us. And because the fight against drugs was so close to Bra Hugh's heart, I know that there's a young man in this audience who's very concerned about the impact of Nyawupe in his community. Let's go for it.
Oh, my name is Samuel Shabalala.
You can stand, please, Samuel Shabalala.
Okay. I'll say to Tumamina Jehovah. Why? Because I come from Nyaupe. I smoked Nyaupe for 12 to 13 years. But just because of God's grace, today I'm free, and I'm free indeed.
What would you like the government to do for people like yourself?
Yeah.
And what will you do with them?
You know, my wish, actually, abantu bayakhala ngaphandle siswami. Bakhala ngenyawuko bathi inyawupe ayegeki. But mina ngizothi namhlanje okungenzeke ebantwini uJehova kuyenzeka.
Okay, yes. So he said that a lot of people are crying and they believe that somebody cannot be cured from their addiction on Nyaupe, and he says that he has been cured, and of course there's a Christian perspective and Christian journey that is his pillar. So thank you very much. Let's hear from Tumamina. Thokoza, can you stand, Gogo?
Oh, okay. Yeah, mina ngizokhulumela ukuhlukumeza kwabafazana and ngizokhuluma ngesizulu nje vele ngoba ngiyazi express. Yeah, ithuma mina ayisebenzi because of sizithumile thina self. Yithi esibulawayo and yithi esenza umsebenzi wokuthi siyahlukumezeka. And yithi send ama message ukuthi stop killing women's bodies thina self. And we know ukuthi what happened to Ufezeka. So we were crazy by that time. Ufezeka. The president was there by that time, and as I am the next. But because of Sega president, now Sega has abafazi bayarage. What does that mean? So we are tuma or real tuma or wenzani, but I sebenzi tuma mina.
Thank you very much, Gogo. Let's go to
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prince Mhlanga. And, you know, when I hear the word Tumamina, I'm thinking of myself as a person. You know, I've got this image inside of me, which now I want to speak to the youth. I want to speak to a lot of the youth. And I want to tell the youth that it's possible. You know, it's possible. I come from a place where, you know, even if where I come from, people would look at Alex and call that a suburb, you know. So the people in Alex, they may think that it's bad, but trust me, there's people that have it worse. Even though they have it worse, you're still alive. You know, that's one of the most important things of being human. You're still alive. The fact that you're alive, tomorrow can bring you something which you don't even know. Tomorrow, something can change. So instead of us complaining, I understand that we can't complain. It's very tough, it's painful, but let us not forget the power that we have as human beings. We've got this power inside of us. When we go to sleep, we have dreams.
If you're hungry and you don't have access to education, people don't believe that they have power under those circumstances.
They have the power of the mind.
Okay, power of the mind will feed your stomach and get you a job. Okay, hold on. There is Celeste in the audience. Celeste wants to talk about the government. You have a problem with the composition of our government. Very quickly, I'll come back to you, Lungisa.
Okay. Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa talks about diversifying the government. But if you look at how the cabinet is made up, it's made up mostly predominantly of men who are over their 50s and 60s, 2 women who are also old, and no disabled people. So what is he actually fighting for? What is he tumoring himself for? You know? So he can't be advocating for such and then do another.
Perhaps we can say I take your point fully, but perhaps we can say that there aren't enough people living with disability because they could, Michael Masuta, the Minister of Justice, and of course the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Ms. Henrietta, who's also living with blindness. So we do just acknowledge them, but your point is a valid one. Those are your alliance partners, SACP. Are you going to take this message to them? Particularly also what Nolwazi said at the beginning, that NGOs, civil society, they've been doing this stuff, so it is the politicians who need to be too much.
Clearly, there's a huge trust deficit between society and the powers that be. Powers that be that will include both business and government. I mean, I'm standing here and I'm thinking to myself, what does Tumamina means to a child who comes from a village somewhere in the Eastern Cape, who wants to access job and education opportunities in Gauteng and is forced to sleep under Mandela Bridge, an iconic bridge, because they don't have access to shelter? What is Tumamina to a person? Because we keep on referring to Alexandra. Alexandra represents a microcosm of the totality of the problems we face in South Africa. Across the road in Sandton, literally you can take a stone standing in Alexandra and throw it across the road in Sandton.
But we know all of that. We know all of that. Suppose the question is, you know, when I'm with people who are close to the seat of power, I'm very hard on them. So I'm going to be hard on you because these are your alliance partners. Yes. You are repeating the grievances that people have brought. How, as an alliance partner, can you not make that part of your DNA, your identity, to be representing these voices and forcing your alliance partners to do something?
In fact, the call for a reconfigured alliance speaks exactly to that. We have resolutions as alliance partners, as different alliance components, that speaks to the nexus of the problem. But when it comes to implementation at the level of government, we do not see that.
So what do we do about it? Okay, let's leave it there for the moment. When we return, a last word from our panel. See you in a moment.
Afternoon. I wanted to say that these people from AfriForum, they still want to perpetuate this white supremacy, of which we gave them 24 years without confronting them about the oppression that we've experienced in the past.
Speech ANC make people fool. This Tumamina song by Ramaphosa, those are the things that can be believed by fools. Because there's no implementation of everything. All they know is rhetoric speech. Thank you.
Not the Indian businesses that does exactly what they complain about, what the white people do. They take them in the majority of businesses making money, and slavery, the worst of all. The white people don't have slavery so much. The Indian population that has got businesses, they have got slavery. And the lesser payment, they go for low payment.
Hayi into kathuma mina utsho nje ngoba kudala sibathuma nabanye abohlula lonto bafuna nje babahluthe bona ekugqibeleni.
Tumamina is just something that used to just maybe rise the face of us.
Ayikho lento uRamaphosa uyasichata njengesicelo bonke benza kanje. So azothuki into Tumamina othuma thina alihoyanga abelalini sihlala sikulongxaki oko asihoyanga nangoku kuyavotwa bathi masiyovota phofa.
Afternoon. I wanted to say that these people from AfriForum, they still want to perpetuate this white supremacy, of which we gave them 24 years without confronting them about the oppression that we've experienced in the past.
Speech ANC make people fool. This Tumamina song by Ramaphosa, those are the things that can be believed by fools. Because there's no implementation of everything.
Welcome back to the big debate. We're live on SABC2 and SAFM. Don't forget, this is very important. When this show ends on TV and radio, the discussion continues on Facebook and YouTube. So do stay with us online. But first, let's hear what our panel have taken away from today's discussion. Kali, I'll start with you.
Well, I believe firmly that despite divisions in our society, God gave us all hands at the end of our own arms. That we can use to improve our own situation, and we can learn from mistakes in history, but also what people did to improve their own positions. After the Anglo-Boer War, many Afrikaners died under the British flag. We did not ban that flag. We did not nationalize British banks. What we did is we collected money from communities and started off small businesses. And that is, if we're going to have an attitude to say, let's improve our own position and not have intolerant people in our society, such as those, I think there's a great future.
Okay, in our segment, I do want to challenge you about affirmative action post the Anglo-Boer War, because government intervention and assistance was also important to help the Afrikaners form the industries that you're talking about. We'll talk about that in a moment, but Caesar, your closing comment.
Sure, I just want to say two things. I think, firstly, there are serious questions to be asked about apartheid interests and how they continue to have a disproportionate voice in our debates, whether about land, government, or service delivery. So I think apartheid didn't die, it got privatized. Secondly, I think I would want to say, I think the politicians are playing games with us, and it's high time that we stopped believing promises which we've been sold and only started getting sent when we can see the results of promises. And so I would say the new dawn is nothing but an old story.
I would like to say, particularly from the gentleman from the SACP, the reason why there is a trust deficit is because he can sit here and say to us that they cannot implement the things we're talking about now. But in 2009, when they wanted to install President Zuma, they were able to do so, and there was no conversation around, no, we're unable to do so once it gets to the... That's why we have a trust deficit. And the second point, the problem with the minority rights conversation is that I don't understand how you can live in this country in the way that it is, with the kind of inequities that we have, and think that the most pressing problem that we have is minority rights to freedom of speech, to speak about the apartheid flag.
We'll pick up that. Bishop will give you the last word.
Thank you. We have seen and heard the challenges that everybody has. In fact, I said at the beginning that we haven't cleansed the government. Yes. The point was that the SACC declared the government to be morally illegitimate. And as a result of that, we then said, let's call South Africans to come together to set the values and standards that will inform public policy, so that you have a demand-driven democracy rather than a democracy that depends on who says what is it, this and that. We will need a government. We certainly need a spirit such as Cyril has got, but that spirit must be informed and driven by what people are saying on the ground. This country is the only, one of the few countries, if not the only country in Africa, which does not count the small magwinyas that people make in the GDP, because it doesn't care for the small efforts that people are making.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Bishop. Jacob Zuma is gone. Cyril is the president. He says it's a new dawn, and he's been taking a few morning walks with us to help us feel the glow. Do you see the sun coming up over South Africa? Can we get our mojo back and work together for social justice with Bra? Cyril, you decide. Thank you for joining the big debate. We continue online. So, Simpiwe, what do we need to do for ourselves? How do we reach the next step?
Well, I actually think that we are on the right track when it comes to civil society and what we are pushing for. I think that we knew what we were getting ourselves into in 1994 when we got into the compromise agreements that we got into, and I think that Madiba was being very prophetic when he said that there will be many more hills to climb, more or less. And also there's one other very important voice that said that we will fulfill or we will betray, I think, our destiny. I'm not sure if I'm using the right words, but I think that as a people, we definitely know what needs to be done. And we're hoping that our government is also sincere when they act or behave in a manner that makes us believe that we're all on the same page. Right. So what needs to be done is what is already happening. I'm thankful for the EFF and the Voice and how they've put a spanner in the works, because it has gotten the whole country talking, and it has brought us all back to the fold and made us realize how far we've strayed away from our vision of freeing South Africa as a whole, as a society. And I think that we are on the right track now when it comes to doing that. We seem to, anyway, all the important elements seem to be on the
aligning.
Yes,
aligning.
Everyone is aligning, and I'm looking forward to the future.
And I'll ask the ANC through Dr. Matolo Motshekga whether they're also grateful to the EFF, especially on the land question and the prominence that it's enjoying. I'll ask you in just a moment. But Lungisa, you are from Cape Town. You work in education. Tell us what you're seeing when you work around your community and you hear the words Tumamina. What comes to mind in relation to the education issues that you deal with every single day?
Every day we deal with abject poverty. We see inequality. Our work is in the farms. We see how our people are struggling on farms, how people are evicted on a daily basis, how children still do not have access to education, how women do back-breaking work for very little wage. And now this government is promising of living wage. We don't know when that will be. The people are starving. We see poverty every day at face value. And we interact with that. We try to come up with possible ways of which people can participate in their own transformation. We say that the people have got to stand up, people have got to struggle and push and resist and stand up for their rights. The country has got a constitution which has got the Bill of Rights. I am ashamed and afraid and embarrassed that the AfriForum has to say what it said here today, when we know people who live on farms and small-scale farmers, how much they are struggling, and that the space for farming, the land is occupied by commercial farmers. So the struggle is on. The struggle for the land is on. The struggle for the rural women who work the land and produce food and try to feed their families is still on. So the education is very critical.
I want you to come in here. I'll tell you why I want you to come in. I mean, I'm just reflecting on what's being said here today. There's so many obstacles that are standing in the way of us achieving that dream, whatever it is. But I always get a sense as a South African that the government speaks as if it doesn't have power. Yes. So, in other words, AfriForum, of course, must take the blame and responsibility for whatever it is that you are raising in the context of the work that they're doing. But when the argument is that we can't move forward because of this constituency, when you have the government that has the law on its side and it is not using it, who's not serious about the development and the progress of black, impoverished, marginalized people?
I think sometimes really we make the mistake of making a distinction between the state and the market, rather than looking at the interests. Because in some instances you find that the same people who are making the policy are often beholden to some interests that can find expression within the private sector. Now, from what I'm hearing from Mrs. Lungus is that it's clear in the space that we're in now that the terrain of struggle, when we talk about the terrain of struggle, it's in the economic space, it's in the material realm. And I think if we don't appreciate that and appreciate the obstacles that come with that. So for instance, she makes the point of commercial farmers. 40,000 commercial farmers in this country produce 90 to 91% of all of what we eat. Now when we have this conversation that no, you mustn't take land, we forget that there are many parcels of land that are suboptimally used, that are sitting in the hands of white commercial farmers who are heavily indebted, who are no longer producing on some of those farms. And I think when we have these conversations, we need to be decisive because, you know, it's one thing to say, let's collaborate, let's sit around the table once again. We know all the issues. And I think at some point, when we say Tumamina, the Tuming must also imply some form of pain from those people who are incumbents. Kali has the kind of perspectives that he has because when you are used to have enjoyed a superiority complex and oppressed others, equality seems oppressive when you come from that kind of environment. And I think we must stop this thing of saying isolating interests and saying they are minority interests, the interests of the majority.
South African
We're in the same
interests,
boat.
can we get to that?
And I think at some point we need to have some of those who are in the minority, but who are materially and economically majority, to cede some of that control and take some pain for the kind of things we need.
Tate Mutaka, you are meant to be the judge and jury here because you are in power.
That's why we adopted.
Listen.
That's why we adopted a resolution which says we will expropriate land without compensation.
Because the EFF...
We did that before they did
so. You didn't do it before, you said it. You didn't do it, you said it.
At our national conference, but when they proposed it in Parliament, we agreed with them, but we said we must do it within the Constitution, and they agreed. So there's convergence.
They offered you their vote. They offered you their two-thirds.
It was not a question of a vote. It was a question that everything must be done orderly, without disruption.
No, I'm challenging you there.
So,
no, let me challenge you. Hold on. That is, I must challenge you because in Parliament, that is where order is. What happened in Parliament with the land issue, when it was on the table, the EFF said, here, we'll give you our votes together, two-thirds majority to change the constitution so that this order is attained, and you rejected that for political expediency.
All progressive parties in Parliament agree that we must do it within the Constitution, and you will see that we are going to have public hearings so that civil society must have maximum
Are you all going to attend?
participation. So you will be all invited to participate.
Kali, does that give you comfort that the party in government is saying that they're going to do it in an orderly fashion, whatever that means? Does that comfort you?
Well, if somebody can give me one example in the world where it was done orderly, that it did not fail and it led to huge poverty, then please give that example. You can look what happened in Russia. Please let me finish. In Russia, you had 4 million people dying due to poverty. You had we have a 90% unemployment rate in Zimbabwe. When they took the route, this is exactly.
Hold on, okay. I'm listening. The microphone can pick you up. Hold on, let him finish.
I have a question.
Yeah? Okay.
No. Actually, I have a question. Why are we? No, Reggie. Why are we giving Kali so much airtime? Why are we giving Kali so much airtime?
Everybody's had time.
No, we are not. No, we are not. Why are we giving this guy so much airtime?
What I wanted to say is, when what is propagated here was done there,
you don't want to listen. I don't want to listen to Kali.
You said, Kali.
Okay. I don't want to listen to this guy.
You said that if somebody can give you, we've invited him to hear the plurality of voices in our society. We're giving you all.
Leave your anti-white racism.
Don't get into a tit for tat.
Leave your anti-white racism.
Let's get back to the topic. You said that if anyone can give you an example of where land restitution was done and it was successful. Here is Caesar sitting next to you.
He said North Korea.
No, hold on. Here he is giving you examples. Are you going to take that? And Brazil is another one that I will add. Productivity went up, and
I'd like to
state of
respond
living
very quickly because to use Zimbabwe as a scare tactic is a very familiar tactic that's used. The actual story of Zimbabwe, if I can have a minute, is that if you don't take action, And if you aren't decisive, the people take matters into their own hands. And so if we don't do something... Hold on. So can I just finish?
Just finish your point?
I just want to finish because I think this is important, and I think I need to be able to say this point. If we don't act, and if we give conservative interests this big platform to whip us into fear and prevent us from actually taking decisive action, that's the dangerous thing for stability in this country. So all this fear tactics is not based on any evidence, and it's based on trying to stop us from realizing we have the power, we need to take it into our hands and move forward. Otherwise, Zimbabwe will happen, and it's going to happen in a way that will be very dangerous.
Yeah. Then we will have 90% unemployment.
Okay, let's give the
factual
bishop a
issues
chance.
are that I'm talking about Zimbabwe now. The Lancaster House Agreement in 1980 had a clause in the constitution that says don't talk land reform for the first 10 years. And when you do, it will be a buyer-seller agreement.
Yeah.
And when that 10 years came, which is 1990, there was then a process that was started with the land with the land commission that was led by Professor Rukuni to actually establish what the issues are. And when that was brought to the 4,000-5,000 white farmers who control the best land in Zimbabwe, you know what happened? They resisted. They resisted. They resisted. And that's why we had what we have now. So what I'm saying here, in South Africa, we have the prospect. I'm speaking now from the churches. We have congregations of at least 20 million people organized, who can start this organization, this conversation. Let us make the effort to make sure that all the people have their day in this country in a meaningful way. It can be done.
Okay, where's the microphone? Let's get the microphone. Come in, Black Business Council. Come in, Black Business Council. Black Business Council, carry on, please.
Yeah. I spoke about I spoke about the fact that the minority becomes majority. And I think it has been proven today that the Kali is getting a bigger chunk of the airtime because of the same thing. So it's a minority, but it becomes a majority when it comes to the issue of discussions. And for me, what I said, the Tumamina thing is going to come to an end sooner, because once you start talking about land, you get told about the market, the rent, all those other interests, and food security, as if black farmers haven't been around for all our lives. We've been having black farmers all our lives. For me, the biggest threat to our democracy is to keep on accommodating the minority to the extent that we've been doing. We don't have an exclusively Pedi school, but we've got exclusive African schools. Our kids are still learning Afrikaans 24 years down the line. And it's very, very painful when you are teaching your kids Afrikaans, because the government hasn't been decisive. We need government to be decisive. We need government to take actions. We need government to pass laws that are going to force people to do what they're supposed to be doing. We can't be sitting in 24 years down the line where when there's a black CEO supposed to be appointed, he's appointed with a white CEO.
The prefect.
So you get the black CEO being babysitted. That can't be Tumamina. We have a situation where black companies are not given opportunities in white businesses. They are not given procurement opportunities. When they're given that, they're given the very, very smallest thing. They get paid after 2 months. The company collapses. So for me, the biggest threat to our democracy is black people continuing to play a minority role while they're majority.
Professor Vinod, I do want you to come in here because you're a professor of law at Wits. And I think from a legal perspective, I mean, the bishop said that in Zimbabwe, they were not allowed to talk about the land issue for 10 years. That was not the situation with us. And it makes one skeptical about the law. If the law is there to make books beautiful and it's not being used, then it is meaningful. It is meaningless. What do you think? Oh, you get the microphone. I beg your pardon. I'm getting too many instructions from too many quarters. That's why I forgot about the mic. Sorry, Bishop.
Thank you for giving me the chance to actually make an input from a group of people who probably spend more time thinking and writing books. And here I hear for not the first time the anger of people about things and laws that are not actually put into place. So you talk about the land. It is correct. that the ANC government's thoughts and ideas, and including its implementation, was not in the land itself. In fact, the land system for both reform and restitution is a bit of a cash cow for corruption. It is a cash cow in many other instances, and also for very large inefficiencies. So for the first 10 years, we had this market-related concept, a policy. Now, if you look at our constitution, the market value is only one of 5 principles that have to be used in the constitution. But if you just think for a while, when land was dispossessed, whether it's 1913 or before or after, there was no market. In fact, there was a glut of property. There were far too few people to take up the land. So why are we placing such undue value on market value as being the centerpiece for land restitution or land reform? That is a dereliction of law and our duty.
I'm coming to you next. I'm coming to you next. When you finish speaking, you can move the microphone to the back. Let's go there.
Thank you.
Let's listen.
Yeah, I think we have been irresponsible enough to have allowed people to draw a constitution on our behalf as Africans. This was the first falsehood that we went through. Ramaphosa, as Tumamina today, he was part and parcel of, in fact, collating information on coming up with the ravaged constitution that we have today. So what is it that is going to change now that he's in government? Will he go back so that we tear the actual constitution that bounds us as slaves in our own country? This is the point that I want to cover.
I want the Prof to respond to that, because you are a professor of law, and talking about the Constitution, remembering the period at that time, were people excluded? Was there an opportunity to include people in the way that the gentleman is speaking?
I think if you look back historically, there was some attempt to communicate with people. Yes, there was a very kind of high-browed exercise with intellectuals and other very important people engaging with the constitutional principles and the whole CODESA process. That was, in the end, I would say, more a political compromise than an ideal situation. So we were trying to avoid a number of dangers on the horizon at the time our constitution was drafted in 1994 and finalized in 1996. Again, maybe perhaps this is the lawyer within me. And lawyers have an undue reverence for the law, really, to the point that we believe that it must not be shifted or touched or whatever else. But there's something intrinsic about a constitution. It is what the Germans call the Grundnorm, the basis for which a country lives, the values for which we exist.
What do we do if it's not working for the majority?
What do we do if it's not working for the majority? The power to actually amend the Constitution is there.
Caesar, help us out here. I'm coming to you in just a moment. No, sir. We have to give other people a chance. We did listen to you. Caesar, talk to me about the law right now. From what I'm learning, what I understand, maybe I'm wrong, it seems as if we didn't need to change the Constitution to implement expropriation. We didn't need to.
Look,
so what's the hype about now? Why did we not do it? And
well, look, I think this is an important debate. And firstly, the hysteria that has marked this debate about land in our country, I think has been a joke. And so the fear-mongering has actually taken away from a very serious question. And here's my view, because very few people have actually forwarded a view of why this constitutional review that Parliament is embarking on is a good idea. Firstly, you don't always necessarily have to change a constitution just because something is legally impossible. You can do so to make it speedier, or to make the constitution more elegant, or to prevent potential practical problems with frustrating constitutional intentions. So with the question of restitution, the Constitution allowed for restitution, and it said this can happen, but it got caught up in such a lot of legal logjams that the actual Constitution intention was frustrated by practical reality. What happens when the Court gets hit by decades of litigation, and 20 years later they say, oh, it was constitutional all along? That doesn't help anyone in the short term. So I think there's a strong case that the Constitution can be made more elegant, that it can be formulated around preempting legal challenges, and that would actually leave us in a much better situation. And all this hysteria about changing a constitution and Zimbabwe and Venezuela is preventing us from thinking, how can we get more decisive? The reason being, we simply don't have time to wait around anymore. And that's my fundamental point and my response to Kali as well. If we wait, what's to say this whole constitution doesn't go up in smoke and then we can't start anew?
You're itching to say. We wouldn't need the rear guard or the use of the constitution if those who currently own the land were really committed to the spirit of reconciliation. And the reason why I mention this is because it seems that this new dawn is framed in a very Mandela-esque way of the 90s, that all of us are going to come, we're going to lend a hand, we're going to, in a very charitable and voluntary way, do all of these things. And if Nyani, we did have the reconciliatory attitude from white people in particular in this country, and their commitment to justice, we wouldn't even have to have the debate around whether or not we use market value or the public interest or any of these things. And I think we need to be clear, when we are saying all shoulders to the wheel, it is all shoulders to the wheel, and not just only certain shoulders, and maybe those who are unwilling to take the cut, not wanting to enter the conversation.
You're nodding, Simpiwe, and just adding to that, I'm just thinking that perhaps we didn't have a conversation then about what reconciliation means. It doesn't mean holding hands and accessing the same shops, the same parks and whatever. What reconciliation means is exactly the socio-economic issue that you're talking about. But you were nodding while Ebonga was speaking. Go ahead, please. Hold on. I'm coming to you, sir. I am coming to you. I've given you a mic. I'm coming to you.
I actually speak quite a bit about rainbowism and how it was a very false equivalent to true reconciliation, and for the past 24 years we have been suffering under that and seeing our people more and more entrenched in poverty. So we definitely need Abo Khalil and them to tumor themselves to actually do the right thing for
Do you think the Rainbow Nation is dead?
No, it never existed. It never really existed. But I think there's still a chance, right?
On
perhaps,
condition.
Yes, perhaps now that the white people can see that we are tired, we are hurtful, you know, they will stop acting like they are victims because they are not.
Okay.
You know.
Sir, from Transform RSA, tell us what your contribution is.
Yes, I would like to add on the words of this gentleman here.
Yeah.
It would be a sacrilege to say South Africa is being transformed, whereas 95% of the land still belongs to white people. It is unfair for us to say we're going to move forward, whereas a large majority of this country, they live in poverty. So I should think the real conversation should start with our politicians. They need to be held accountable for what is happening. And we need people such as this man from Volksfront to be sincerely sensitive to the issues of the black people. I think the dialogue should start there, with them being sensitive to us. Because for 350 years we've been under apartheid rule, and it's not fair.
I'll give you a chance to respond later, Kali, because this is directed at you. We'll give you a chance in a moment, but let's just hear some voices from the audience. I mean, Sidi, you cover South African politics. Here's the nation unfolding in front of your eyes. What do you make of this?
And nothing that has been said in this room is surprising. Not Kali's minority views and wanting to protect their rights or their privileges.
Can you stand up,
actually,
please, darling? We can't see
Absolutely. I'm saying nothing in the room is surprising. Kali wanting to protect privileges is exactly what we see on a day-to-day basis. The Tumamina phenomenon being exactly like the Rainbow Nation package that was sold when we were kids.
It's poetry.
Exactly that. So what's interesting for me, though, with the Tumamina phenomenon, especially with Cyril Ramaphosa at the center of it, is then he scored on goals. You know, there was a Ramaphoria. The beauty of leaving somebody to show themselves to the people is that they'll score on goals. I mean, today, of all days, we saw Cyril Ramaphosa with Tatani Mahlangu, and when he was asked about this, he says, her resignation shows accountability. That is not an answer when people are speaking about a tragedy, about life as Sidimeni. South Africans, and also maybe that's part of the problem with us as a society, we are so desperate for hope that anything sells. That's why Tumamina resonated with people. It started showing the cracks when he wasn't moving fast enough on Jacob Zuma. So there are little things where
people will show you, leaders will show you what they are. SACP saying reconfiguration. You've been singing that song, and you're quiet when you're awarded with positions in cabinet. So there are all of these things that are being said in the room are exactly what we see on a day-to-day basis.
I know that you probably wanted, thank you, Tsidi. You probably wanted to make a different point, but Tsidi has just... You probably wanted to make a different point, make it, but also Tsidi has just reminded me that people show you who they are. So when our new president, who wants us to embrace the new dawn, kind of agreed or endorsed that VAT increase, because look, he's the CEO of the Republic, so you can't say it's Malusi Gigaba who did it. So it's all that cognitive dissonance. You say one thing, but you do something else, huh?
Sure. So look, the only point on land that I'm going to venture a comment on is that there's a long and a strong emotional bias towards agricultural land. But there's about 15 other acts that talk about the disposition of land, including the Group Areas Act. And what we haven't worked out yet is, and there's a lot to be answered for on this, the disposition of that property has meant that black people never had security and title to property to access credit. So when you see the boom in the unsecured lending business, it's the consequence of the disposition of land. So I'm just wanting to introduce the fact that agricultural land is complex and it is emotional and is important. But there are a series of acts beyond that that have much dire, bigger economic consequences on black South Africans. Your issue and the question you raise...
It's South Africa's issue.
It's a South African issue. So this is where I do think business has an opportunity here and a role to play. There are creative opportunities here for people to find different ways of getting the economic benefit, but ensuring that the purpose of the land is still deployed in the interest of the nation. What we're not doing is we're not engaging in that conversation. So I'm cautious that we're so myopic on the land conversation. We're losing a big range of disposition that has had much more dire consequences on black South Africans.
All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. There are a lot of people who want to speak. We can't all speak. What we're going to do is to be democratic. If somebody from your party organization has spoken, then I will defer to those who haven't spoken. I see you, Lekgotla, and this gentleman behind me, I beg your pardon, sir. In fact, your hand was up before everybody else when we were still in the first segment. So I am coming to you. I see all your hands, but if somebody from your organization has just spoken, I think let's diversify. There's House of Gala. We haven't heard who they are. I'm particularly curious because you seem very, very young. It's young people who are present here and want to be part of the dialogue. So I'm going to miss you for just a moment and come to you, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Be greeted in the name of Jesus.
Please speak louder.
Be greeted in the name of Jesus.
We are a diverse audience, yes.
If I didn't mean to offend anybody by greeting you by that name. I'm going to just take you back to, and I think all of our communities are suffering in the same cases. I'm from Eldorado Park. My name is Faisal. I am living at the Case Foundation in Eldorado Park at Des hairdresser. Our community, Eldorado Park, is suffering gangsterism, drug lords, and killing one another for all different types of, just for power. If our government is doing the same thing, and we blame our constitution, then I suggest that you try the constitution of God. As you said, Bishop, with all due respect, that the government needs cleansing.
Oh, okay. In fact, I do want to ask you a question because Eldorado Park was one of those communities that President Jacob Zuma visited when I was working with Nolwazi then, when there were parents who were phoning from Eldorado Park saying that our children are dying of drugs and the police are working with the drug lords and the lolly lounges. Yes, and then the president went there. I just want to find out what's happened since then, the former president.
No results.
Nothing.
No results, absolutely no results. What we need is, we've got all this powerful lawmakers, walks. Send the walks.
Okay, so Transform RSA, I'm going to give your last member a chance to speak because somebody else has spoken, and then we're going to go to those who haven't spoken. And Lekgotla, I am coming to you.
Okay, yeah, the first thing I want to note is about the structure.
we can't speak about the government and then stop speaking about the structure. The structure that is in place at the moment in our country is a very important thing. We can't change the constitution. So what I'm saying, the fact I'm making is Cyril Ramaphosa, when he made the statement of Tumamina, he was out of order.
What should he have said instead?
No, I'm saying he was out of order because, according to me, he can't say those kind of things. Because I feel like, Cyril Ramaphosa, he has a relationship with some private people. For example, if we look at the Oppenheimers, his capacity to lead is influenced by them. So he's a capitalist, and then he has a social capital with the Oppenheimers. So if they have a relationship, at the end, what is going to do? They are going to influence every idea or decision that he makes to our constitution.
Yes. What do you say, Evan? No. Oh, PAC, you haven't spoken. What do you say?
Look, I mean, really, we can't run away from the fact that there are certain relationships, collaborations, and partnerships that were struck between those in the liberation movement and big business since the 1990s. And to be frank with you, big business had it in their interest to want to influence that kind of conversation. Because if you look at, for instance, the political compromise that the professor talks about, that political compromise was largely driven on the back of the kind of influence that what was then called the Urban Foundation and a range of other sort of think tanks that tried to influence the political direction and in particular the economic policy decisions of the ruling alliance at that point in time. And it doesn't mean to say that there were no alternatives. And I think this is my issue with people who like to push market-led solutions to all of these things. They say, well, there's no other alternative. It's either you move with what the ratings agencies say or what the marketplace says, and you don't have any other alternative.
And I think with our realities here.
And I think we need to, I mean, look, we're the most unequal society in the world. Surely, you know, the foregone opportunity would be to say, how do you try innovative and creative ways? Because clearly there is no alternative kind of politics hasn't helped us for the last 23 years.
House of Gala, tell us who you are and what your contribution is today.
My name is Obvious, and I come from House of Gala, an NGO which supports LGBTQI rights and all of that.
Right, welcome.
As much as we speak about this issue at hand, let's not forget that we have other issues, especially in our communities. Let me say, as a black community, we have hate crimes, we have abuse, we have killings of women. Before we say, okay, let's do something massive, as much as we speak about land and all the other things, let's get together and try and understand each other. Don't be against each other, but work together.
All right, can you give the microphone to the gentleman here? Bring it down. The gentleman here. Okay. Nolazi, I'm going to pick on you here because I know these are matters that are very close to your heart. And I understood the gentleman to say the economics and land are not unimportant. But if every single day when you wake up, your life is under threat because of your identity, because of your orientation, you are unlikely to just rise up and answer the call for Tumamina and get into debates, sophisticated debates about economic policy, national development plan, and so on, when you think, if I step out of my house, already I'm othered.
I think that there's sectors of our population, particularly black women in this country, and the LGBTIQ community, where as you're saying, it's not unimportant, but your day-to-day lived reality is beyond that. It speaks to patriarchy, it speaks to violence, it speaks to, you know, but when you look at Tumamina, I think a number of conversations that I had in particular with black women and people from and people from the queer community was how the president then decided to, for example, put Batabile Dlamini in the Department of Women in the presidency, a department which by the way has been redundant for women and in general, right? And there's a huge queer community in this country that is almost erased from the conversations that we have on a day-to-day basis about the economy, about politics. We talk about racial politics. Sometimes we even get to gender politics. But the queer community who are dying on a day-to-day basis based on identity, I can understand why they sit back in these conversations and say, I don't even care about Tumamina. Regardless of the economy or the policy or the land is very far for people in the queer community. If your very existence is a day-to-day thing of, am I going to be able to get to work and back and stay alive?
PAC? Quickly, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to tell Mr. Matole and Mr. Ramaphosa that you are telling the complete opposite of the truth. If you are serious about the land expropriation, you must first of all release the freedom fighters who are still in prisons. The members of Azanian People's Liberation Army fought for this country, but even today they are still suffering in your presence. Your Freedom Charter prostituted this land. It claims that our land belongs to everyone who lives in it. While we know that everywhere in the world, the land belongs to the indigenous people. We, the black people, are the indigenous people of this country. It belongs to us, and its control and ownership is our unchallengeable, undoubted, and unquestionable birthright. So today, the so-called AfriForum are actually undermining us because the ANC gave them the right to have share in this land. So,
yes? Finish your point,
I just want to tell this guy from AfriForum that as the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, we are coming. We are coming for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll give you a chance. I know. Hold on. Kali, they're coming for you. You better start preparing. I'm coming to you in just a moment. There was something else that was directed at you that you need to respond to, and I still want to challenge you on the affirmative action because, okay, we'll get to that in a moment. But Lekgotla?
Already,
carry on.
Okay.
Carry on.
Look, I just think this message from Cyril Ramaphosa is very dangerous. This message is very meaningless, especially if you look at the type of a person that he is as a politician. These guys have said since 1994, we sent them in 1994, they disappeared on us. 25 years, next, I know. Now, the president was sent by the corrupt cabals that sponsored his political comeback in the ruling party. But one other thing that I want to say is this man is part of a band of looter politicians that have lost all sense of pride, all sense of duty, and all sense of patriotism. But on the question of land, really, for the close to 17 years that I've been in the civil service.
70?
Close to 17 years.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Now, we've got the tools. The Constitution is the biggest policy point in this country. We've got the Land Claims Commission. We've got the Land Claims Court. We've got all the tools. Multiple volumes of sets of regulations. Multiple volumes of sets of legislature. We have all the tools, but let me tell you what's happening. Ruling party politicians, even the EFF politicians, they jump in the queue. They had all the land. They have not worked for the people to get the land back. There are many cases, multiple thousands and thousands of cases. Now, this government does not want to work for the people. They've given in to greed. Cash grab agenda is...
What's our alternative? Carry on speaking.
I mean, really, for me,
carry on speaking.
What's coming out of the conversation is also the observation that what we did in 1994 was not only to demobilize, but we've actually killed some of our own organizations as black and African people. Let me make this example. The brother is from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. Now, when the debate was happening inside Parliament around the motion to allow the expropriation of land without compensation, the president of the PAC, which is the sole representative of the PAC in the National Assembly, was notably absent. And you ask yourself this question to say, within our communities, we are complaining here now about one particular vehicle, one particular organization, which is the ANC. But within our liberation traditions, the ANC was not the only organization. And we have systematically killed our organizations, AZAPO, the PAC, Unity Movement, many of our organizations
it's greed.
who would be able to provide an alternative kind of thought and provide cogent alternatives, particularly on this question of land.
Okay. So what happens in a debate is that if you're directing a question to a speaker who's spoken before, they must respond. He's raised an important issue. I'm sure you want an answer to your question, especially about cadres who are still imprisoned today. And he is the chair of the Justice Portfolio Committee. So can you respond to that, please?
Under President Ramaphosa, we said ezinto zizojika. Now we
give him a chance. He's responding. You're raising something. Let him respond.
We said ezinto zizojika, and that's why I'm not afraid to be amongst you, because
carry on. We can hear you.
That's why I'm not afraid to be amongst you, because we want to hear you. We want the voice of the people.
But you're not hearing these for the first time. That's the issue.
Okay.
Okay. Nolwazi, and Dr. Matole Motshekga touched you on your studio.
I am deeply and deeply offended by having a senior ANC leader here telling us as if the ANC has not been empowered for the past 24 years. It sounds like electioneering to me, and I feel that it completely disrespects the kind of conversation that we're trying to have here.
Ask Jiggy. Isn't Jiggy on your message?
My name is Poppy, and I'm representing the YCL. And then I'd like to state a fact that, do we really realize that we're being led by a black president, in which our interests as blacks should have been looked into, because we are the majority that are actually voting for the black president in particular, and now we are being overlooked, and then white people are actually owning a large amount of land that they actually do not even use.
But don't you have a conflict? Hold on. I do love the fact that young people are engaging with our politics, but having said what you said, don't you have a conflict belonging to the Young Communist League, who has, you have representatives who are in parliament, you have representatives who are in government. Shouldn't you take that to them?
We do have representatives, and I feel that we are not being heard.
So you want to leave the Young Communist League?
No, we are not being heard.
By
the government is not listening to us.
Whoa. Hold on.
The government is not listening to us.
Hold on. I guess what I'm asking is, why do you then continue to give them your presence, your vote, your expertise, your brains, if they're not hearing you? Why are you
They
still
are
there?
promising something that is not there.
So you're going to leave
They are
now?
promising something that is not there.
Okay. Bishop, you want to speak here? Okay, let the. If you don't have a mic, there's no point, because nobody can hear you. So let's get the bishop to speak.
I want to say that the government of the day in any democracy is a servant of the people. That's what it should be. And what is happening in this country is that the people have given up their responsibility to hold the government accountable. And that we can point all the fingers at government, but the fault lies with us as society. And I think we need to create the containers, the civil society containers that help. We need government. We just have to have government. But that government must be accountable to structures that we create ourselves. And if we don't do that, we have ourselves to blame for all the faults we have.
That's why we have the big debate, so you can take back your power. Sir, you've had the mic for a very long time. Please go ahead. No, if you've spoken before, I can't give you a second chance. No, ma'am. No, we're not going to do that. Everybody who's spoken is not going to speak again. I think a man standing up to want to speak on behalf of any woman puts me off, so we're not going to go there. Sir, she can speak for herself, and the rules are, if you've spoken, let's not go there. Let's give those who haven't spoken a chance. I'm sure you'll agree that's fair.
Tumamina, I'm sorry, I'm not here to point fingers to any parties. But what I would like to say...
No, carry on. I'm just pointing.
We are sorry, Mr. President. There is no time now to tuma you. Okay. What we want is in South Africans, we want service delivery. You know what we want. I'm Zamo Hlabisa from Mpangen in the rural area. Thank you.
Okay. The gentleman there. Sir, are you from the PAC? Okay. All right, you can speak. No, the gentleman here has had his hand up for 2 hours. Bua ntate, bua.
Okay.
Bua ntate, carry on. Time.
Thanks, Ne.
Bua, Papa.
I want to speak about Tumamina, Ne. In my perspective.
Put the microphone in front of your mouth.
Tumamina,
I'm going to take it because we don't have time. I am going to take it because we don't have time. Put it here and talk.
Tumamina, he was trying to say, engage with me, I will respond.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to the president that he must make sure he deal with the people who promised the people houses, and those people are corrupt. And then he must make sure he deal with the people who are killing people at school, in our schools, those students. And he must make sure, like, we need service delivery. There's a place in Ivory Park where I'm staying. It's a informal settlement. It's been there for a long, so it needs service delivery. Thank you.
Okay, sir, very quickly, we're running out of time. I know you've had you've been holding on for a long time. Very quickly,
the point
sir.
that I wanted to raise is that
We can't hear you, sir.
The point that I wanted to raise is that Tumamina must ensure that Ekurhuleni has a university, and second to that, the people of Alexander want land and houses. And the other part that we need to raise is that SCT is not finished. We need to know where does the money come from Gauteng Gambling Board in order to be stolen for such an initiative.
Okay, even amongst the panelists, we only took a few closing comments the previous segment, so those who didn't give us the closing segment the previous time will do that. I think you were not in that last bit. Your closing, what you took from this debate.
Look, I mean, if there's anything that I take from this debate is that there's a contention between this new dawn, this Rama euphoria. And it comes on two fronts. On the one hand, there are conservative interests within the financial markets and within globalized capital that have an interest in this new president. But on the other hand, there is a radical list of demands that the president comes into this presidency with from the Nasrec conference in the ANC. Yeah. And I get a sense that it's going to be very difficult to reconcile these interests. Because, yes, you can get the rand improving on the back of those sentiments. But the moment you begin to have a decisive conversation about land, about accountability, about breaking up monopolies within the private sector, the rand is not going to respond in the same manner, nor are the markets going to respond in the same favorable manner. And I'm saying that, for me, that's what is going to put the brakes on Tumamina. And, you know, optimism, good sentiment
walks
and euphoria, all of walks in
Khayelitsha
Khayelitsha in the morning when people are catching taxis, all of that is good from a PR perspective. But PR is not strategy. And I think what we need in this kind of country is a strategy, one, that we implement to be able to deal with the underlying structural issues that we have.
Simpiwe, your closing comments.
Okay, well, for me, Tumamina, I would like to see a huge focus on education, especially rural education or black education. I'd like to see a strong focus on protecting women's rights and creating more opportunities for women, especially poor women in the rural communities again. And also, I'd like to see more sexual minorities being protected by our government even more.
Thank you. And Crispin, your closing arguments?
I'm more convinced than ever that we need Tumamina. We need it, but the deployment has to happen within the state. It has to ensure that we have an accountable, fully funded, efficient state. That's got to be the starting point. And the second point I'm reminded on is how much work we've got to do as a society, how much more we've got to talk and suspend judgment. What we haven't covered really, and I hope that the big debate covers it at some point. So we've been very clear about what we don't like. What is it that we do want? That's the hard work. What does the future look like that is more inclusive society and a society where people can live and express lives? Currently, what we have confirmed is we don't have it at the moment, and we haven't had it for the last 20 years.
Very quickly.
I think it's just people are gearing themselves up for elections. The perfect time, actually, for South Africans to look back at what it is that they want. The ANC had gone as far back as getting 2/3 majority. You sound like you're not happy with anything they've done. You've got the power in your hands again, not too long from now. Yeah. We need to think very carefully about the way forward. If Tumamina is for you, obviously you'll do what you need to do, but South Africans need to think hard.
I'm not sure how much time we have, so I'm just going to give the last word to the Bishop. I'm not sure how much time we have. Bishop?
I'm inviting everybody to a debate and a decision about the values that inform, the standards that inform public policy. If we don't do that, we can't do it. And I think what we really wanted to say is that transformation of the economy is not about tenders. It's about making sure that every household can make a living. And that's really what we should be able to do today.
You've been standing. I'll just steal a few minutes and just give you a chance to speak. Carry on, speak.
Oh,
guys, when you have the mic, just speak. Otherwise, now go.
Greetings, everyone. I think the rise of the EFF is because of what the YCL failed to address in the society. I was once part and parcel of the Young Communist League, and their slogan is socialism in our lifetime. But they are still in a romantic relationship with capitalists. You see. So I became frustrated and became a political hobo, and I no longer have a political home, because when we were there, I was preaching socialism. But they preached socialism on paper. But really, there are a lot of people who are politically ambitious. You see.
By the way, I just want to
very quickly.
I just want to greet the men from the
No. Make
the
it for
racist
your
forum.
closing.
But I want to make a point very quickly to the Afri Forum. It's that land has been expropriated before in this country. The 1913 Native Land Act was actually expropriating land from black people when they introduced the act to actually separate society in terms of Bantu states. It was actually expropriation of land. The only problem is that it was not done correctly. Why are they having a problem actually now that we want to do it correctly and democratically? That is my point.
Okay, Kali, I must, no. Very quickly, there are a lot of questions that were directed at you, and we didn't really debate the affirmative action matter, because you mentioned the Anglo-Boer War. We weren't going to talk about it here today, but we know that there was affirmative action for the Afrikaner nation after the Anglo-Boer War. That's a historical fact.
In the civil service, Afrikaners got jobs, that's so, but there was new enterprises started.
Supported by government, you had the Broeder Bond.
Never the Volkskas and those kind of places was set
Bishop,
up
you're
by
saying? Land Bank,
yeah. So the fact is, but there were new enterprises started. Never was any English company forced to give away shares to Afrikaners. But we're also very dangerous now that we have scapegoat politics. The fact is, the land distribution that has happened failed.
But you've asked him the questions. Let's hear him, even if you don't like his answers. Yeah. Finish your point.
The land redistribution has failed, and because people don't get full property rights, they can't get loans on that property, and that's why 90% of what has been done has failed, and that needs to be addressed.
Your closing comment?
Please.
Hold on, Themba, please.
My closing comments, I would like to cede to Ubab Moteka, because he says that izinto zizojiga. After 24, ngifuna ukwazi nini.
Yeah.
Zijiga nini, baba?
From now,
Baba,
you've been sleeping the whole time. Themba, quickly.
I'm not gonna go long because you've been cutting me, but it's fine. But I
You're
said,
speaking for the second time, but
no, I understand.
Yeah.
I thought I was part of panel, but I'm not. But
you are in the video, and
I want to make sure, and I'm going to make clarity on that. I want to make sure I'll be there on your downfall. As Transformer Africa, I'll make sure that you're going to hold down.
Okay, do we need records? Okay, Caesar.
Look, I just want to close. I just want to close on one very important point that I don't think has been raised sufficiently, and that is also that I just want to close on this point. Young people have been left out of this entire New Dawn conversation. How do you get a new dawn with the same old people who put us into this crisis in the first place? How do you get a new dawn when the cabinet looks like an old age home? And young people, young South Africans, I'm speaking to them. I'm speaking to young South Africans right now. We've been left out of the narrative for 24 years, but they always come to us when they want votes. It's time for young people to stand up and not be sold these ridiculous stories.
I see the bishop. The bishop is laughing when you talk about the old age home. Except you, Bishop. Except you, Bishop.
But the truth is that 50% of young people are out of the economy and in education.
Maybe in Duduzo you can Duduza us and comfort us with a few of those wonderful tunes as we sign off this evening. And of course, thank our viewers for watching, for making their contributions. And this was the last big debate of this particular series. We thank you so much for spending the last 6 episodes with us, and we want to deepen the debate. Thank you for joining us. Has he frozen? No, we finished with the speaking. We finished with that. You may. You may. Thank you so much. Thank you.